Welcome to one of the hottest days in 6 years here in sunny, hot, perspiring Adelaide, where it's going to be 45 degrees today as well. So, nice day to stay inside. But I'm here to talk to you about an issue, though, that does concern me and I've thought a lot about, and that is the impact that one nation is likely to have on Australia, and particularly the shift that is occurring regarding the movement towards one nation. And I think it's a warning for all of us and something we should all be mindful of. Given in particular what seems to be happening in the United States, where they have moved so far to the right that they have been defined as a Nazi state and certainly have a Nazi problem. Now, I'm not suggesting here that one nation are heading to the same depth and despair as we would see in the United States, simply because one nation clearly are not going to win enough votes to have government. But I am suggesting that there is a slide that's heading in that direction in terms of populism in this country, and we need to be mindful of where it goes, because the United States is a good example of where it can lead. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have a Pauline Hanson as Prime Minister of this country. It's just unfathomable and is never likely to happen, even though I'm sure she has some interesting demands and desires in that particular area, even though she doesn't talk about it. I'm sure they're there fantasizing about that possibility. I want to take us firstly to an interesting article written by Mighty Hassan in relation to all of this. Mighty makes some interesting points about where the United States has headed, and believe me, I'm not equating this directly with anything that Pauline Hanson is likely to achieve, because she won't. But I think there are some indicators here that if we're not watching and we're not aware of the implications of what's happening in our community, we may find ourselves blindly. It may not be about Pauline Hanson, but it may be somebody else who has the control and the power to be able to implement significant change in this country, which would not be in our best interest. Now, Mighty says in his article, and it's only a couple of paragraphs from this article, it should be one of the stories of the United States, if not the world. 80 years after the death of Hitler and the defeat of Nazi Germany, the US government, in the form of the Trump administration, has a Nazi problem. Think I'm exaggerating. Consider the copious amounts of evidence. On social media, as recent investigations by CNN, NBC News and PBS NewsHour have all confirmed, official government accounts can't stop posting Nazi imagery and memes, using dehumanizing language about migrants and leaning heavily into fascist aesthetics. Now, I know that in Australia this is less likely simply because of the hate legislation, hopefully, but it does mean that we need to be mindful of particularly dehumanizing language and what that specifically might mean in this country, because the dehumanizing language may determine how the nation views others, and it is unhelpful because to some extent it has already happened. So let's not pretend. One nation isn't a protest party anymore. It isn't a harmless outfit for frustration. And it certainly isn't a solution. One nation has become a political parasite. It feeds on anger, grows on fear, and offers nothing in return. And the most dangerous part, it convinces people they're being heard while making sure nothing ever changes. One nation sells itself as anti-establishment. We see this in the United States and elsewhere with regard to the right. They claim to speak for ordinary Australians. We've all heard that before in the United States. But here's the question no one ever asks them. What have you actually fixed? Not what you've complained about, not who you've blamed like Albanese and the left. What have you delivered? Housing still unaffordable, wages still stagnant, regional communities still struggling, cost of living still climbing. After decades of existence, one nation has not improved a single material condition for the people it claims to represent. Because outrage isn't governance. One nation's strategy is really quite simple. If something is wrong in Australia, it must be someone else's fault. And we hear Pauline blaming Albanese all the time, but never without solutions. It's always about migrants, Muslims, universities, oh God, the ABC, and of course it's about wokeness. The target changes depending on the news cycle, and it varies from day to day. But the formula never does. It comes with anger first, facts later, and solutions it never ever offers because real solutions require policy, and policy requires competence, something Pauline Hanson hasn't got. One nation doesn't run on competence, it runs on resentment. We just need to look as far as their record to know that. Where are the detailed economic plans? Where are the housing models? Where are the costed budgets? They don't have any because none of this stuff exists for them. What exists are press releases, Facebook posts, and media stunts. It's politics built entirely for headlines. And that's not accidental. If one nation actually solved problems, it would lose its fuel. It wouldn't have any power. It would be doing nothing. Fear must stay alive for the party to survive. Even when one nation doesn't win, it still wins because they drag the political conversation into the gutter. Suddenly, everyone is talking about identity instead of inequality. Culture wars replace class politics. Instead of asking why corporations pay less taxes than workers, we're told to argue about who belongs in the country. That suits powerful interests perfectly, particularly those like Gina Reinhardt, because while Australians fight each other, no one looks upward. That's not rebellion, that's misdirection. One nation wraps itself in the Australian flag, as they'll be doing busily today, but real patriotism doesn't tear society apart. Real patriotism builds, it invests, it includes, and what it does best is it plans for the future. One nation doesn't believe in Australia's strength. It believes in Australia's decline. Every speech assumes we're weaker, smaller, under siege. Does that sound familiar? Ex-United States? That's not love of country. That's marketing despair. And let's be honest about who pays the price. When one nation talks, communities feel it. People get targeted. Teachers get intimidated. Muslims get blamed. Migrants get treated as suspects. Not because of evidence, but because fear polls well. That damage doesn't show up in election results. It shows up in schools, workplaces, and neighbourhoods. Division doesn't disappear after voting day. One nation survives because major parties keep panicking. Every time one nation polls higher, other copies their language instead of challenging it. Borders get tougher. Multiculturalism gets quieter. Dog whistles get louder. Instead of confronting lies, they chase votes. And every chase legitimizes the message. One nation doesn't threaten Australia because it's powerful, because in reality it's not. It threatens Australia because it normalises failure. Fail to govern, fail to unite, fail to offer hope. It teaches people to aim their anger sideways instead of demanding better leadership. Australia deserves more than grievance politics, more than slogans, more than permanent outrage. Because a party that survives on anger has no interest in ever fixing the country it claims to love. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and certainly remember to subscribe to our channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. Let me know what you think. Because if we're not careful, we will turn into a country that blindly looks towards people like Pauline Hanson in order to meet their grievances, something which Pauline Hanson and One Nation are not capable of doing.